you, Bill. All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force and Law and Justice Council meeting, April 17th, 2023. My name is Jack Hovenier. I am the co-chair. Stephen Gockley is not able to join us today, so I'll be facilitating the meeting. Before we get started, I would like to read our land acknowledgement statement. So before we begin, we acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional and unceded territory of the Lummi, Nooksack, Samish, and Semiahmoo people who have cared for and tended this land since time immemorial. Truth and acknowledgement are critical to building mutual respect and connection across all barriers of heritage and difference. So we begin this effort to acknowledge what has been buried by honoring the truth. We pay respect to their elders past and present. Please take a moment to consider the many legacies of violence, displacement, migration, and settlement that bring us together here today. And please join us in uncovering such truths at any and all public events. Okay, I am calling the meeting to order, and the first item we have on the agenda is a presentation and update from Barry, and we've got Marty Solomon from Crossroads Consulting, that most of you know, joining us. And Barry, do you need anything else from me before you guys get started?
No, thank you, Jack. We'll take it from here. Good morning, everybody. This is our, once a month check-in from the Justice Project, but this morning we're going to give you a little bit more meat. That's why Marty's here. She's got all the deets of all the work that's been going on. So she's going to walk us through that. But I just wanted to briefly say that the implementation team has been working really hard to get identified projects and identify opportunities for funding and so on. So you'll see some of the result of that work when as Marty goes through her, walks us through her presentation today. So I will turn it over to her, and thanks all for being here this morning.
I'm sharing screen. Good morning, everybody. Are you seeing the slideshow view right now? I hope.
Yes, we are. Yes.
All right. Well, since we last met on Wednesday of last week, we have been doing a little reworking of things based on your input about the potential implementation plan projects. And so I want to show you that reworking. And I also was hoping that we could talk through not one, but two scenarios. So let's go ahead here and start with the rework. So as I think you might recall, we had 5 groupings in the past version of the potential implementation plans. They were grouping the projects by topic, and we have that, but we've added one, and we had 15 potential projects, and we now have 17. So I'm going to just show you what the changes are. One thing with behavioral health services that changed is that I just changed the order of things. So starting with, okay, what do we already have that we want to increase? And then moving toward what are the new things that we want to add or explore adding. So the first one is all of these are the same as what we had before. They're just in a different order, except number 3, which is increased communication and coordination between organizations providing services to people with behavioral health challenges. And that goes on to who are involved or at risk of involvement in the criminal legal system. So just trying to get that communication and coordination piece integrated into the potential projects. Now, how that happens and who that involves is the next question that will need to be kind of spelled out in the implementation plan. But this was the idea, to put this in here, and you'll see that kind of communication and coordination piece in another section coming right up here. Do you want me to go through the whole thing all of the sections and then we talk, or do you want to, let me just say this. I will keep moving through, but if you have something that you like to say about any of these, just raise your hand or interrupt me and make a comment. Okay, so I'll move on. This is the new section, bolster reentry support services. And in this section, you see the first one, the communication and coordination piece in here between reentry specialists in the jail and community providers to get that warm handoff happening. So trying to emphasize that, that need that we have been hearing for just more connections and smoother processes to help people not fall through a crack between jail and services in the community. Then the Community Resource Center came in here. It was called Behavioral Health Resource Center in the previous version, but in this one, it's Community Resource Center because it really is conceptualized as broader than broader than behavioral health. And it's in this re-entry support services section to try to emphasize that the part of this resource center that is particular to our population that we are working with. So the re-entry support is there at this resource center, along with a lot of other things that people need. Then, then transportation was highlighted. I know Raylene said that, and several other people have said it over time. So we got transportation in here in reentry support.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
So just between number 4 on the first action slide, build a 23-hour crisis relief center, and number 6 on your last that you just referred, I guess number 7, build multi-use community resource center. Are we envisioning at that time that that's going to be 2 distinct new building needs?
In the scenarios, it is, but I think that that's a good question for, for discussion. Is it 2 buildings? Do these things fit together well? Could they be the same place? And so let's look at that in the scenarios. Let's talk some more about that.
Marty, you got another hand, Arlene.
Yep. Hi, Arlene.
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to respond to what Seth just said. I don't see any reason why you couldn't house those 2 sets of services in the same building. They might be connected in terms of actual transference of a person from one part to another. But in any case, there's nothing about them that would make it impossible to do that. I did want to repeat what I said at the last meeting regarding the way that you name the emergency center, and to urge you to include 24/7 behavioral health urgent care, to make it clear that what the service provides.
Yeah, well,
And also there's another reason, which is to not let our planning and actual programs slip away from the original purpose of it, which is to have a non-barrier service, emergency service available for SUD and for mental health care.
thanks, Arlene. Not sure how to negotiate that. Here comes Perry. He's going to help. This is going to be the same thing that we talked about the other day.
I was actually going to touch base back in terms of the possibility of those 2 programs being, in the same facility. a
Oops.
couple of the things in the legislation that I haven't been ironed out, but I have my suspicions. One of the really key points, in addition to, 24/7 service, low barrier, as Arlene had made reference to, and really a no refusal policy, is that legislature is working towards that the 23-hour crisis relief center being, in that legislation, being billable to Medicaid. Super key component for obviously operational stuff, and also that would suggest to me that it will fall under the IMD rule, meaning capacity would be 16. I suspect, again, I'm talking about legislation as opposed to necessarily design, but that would also lean to the possibility that those programs could exist in the same building, in the same facility. So I just wanted to make reference to that.
Thanks, Perry. And regarding the name, it was,
We kind of touched base on that. My thought is that we could certainly add a descriptor to Arlene's point. We want to make sure that people understand what it is. My only point was that there was different language, and I thought that 24 urgent care, it brings up for me primary medical care that I go to on a weekend when I can't get to the ER and that kind of thing. So I just didn't want to create confusion there, but possibly adding some additional language as opposed to a title only. That's my only thought, Marty.
yeah, that we could definitely do that.
I can send
and
you the legislation, Marty. Oh, maybe I did, because it gives some descriptors in it, and that might be helpful for additional.
And we have that in the document, but as far as like when we're doing focus groups or a town hall or something, we should get it on the slide. I'm hearing that it needs to be clear. Hi, Raylene.
Hi, as we discussed putting these two items in one location or separate, I think it's fine to put them both together as long as they're separate entrances or division to a point.
Sure.
As I see when I go into the jail currently, and there's somebody that's having a mental health crisis, all of the deputies that are in that area are focusing on that one individual, and it's leaving not a lot of help for somebody that still needs support, still needs the resources, but it takes a lot more to help that person with the whether it's a substance abuse or a mental health or a combination. And I don't want to deter others that still need navigation, still need the resources, still need the housing, that may not be in that extreme environment. So making sure that not that everybody is being treated with the help and care they need, but you're just not going to need the resources sometimes are more for one individual than somebody else. I don't know if that makes sense, but hopefully it came out somewhat the way it's supposed to.
Yeah. Yeah. So separate entrances, distinct, even if co-located. Hi, Mike.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. A similar comment, we went down and looked at the Everett facility here a couple of weeks ago, and that was one thing I noticed, that there was even though the facilities were close together, there was a clear separation from the facilities, because during the day you had families coming in, you had a lot of people sitting down with a case manager that needed a quiet area. This is a place where you could come and get a phone on the phone day, all of that. So I do feel like it could be close, but it needs to be separate, and it needs to be in a place where people can get to, that's maybe not as much in the industrial section. But the other comment I would have is I wonder if this is maybe just a slightly duplicative, if you will, with the way station. And maybe we will already have a lot of those components in the way station as it comes up. So I would maybe say that we've got some of that in place. Thanks.
So that would be the 23-hour crisis relief may be in place at the way station or the resource center.
No, the resource center would be that kind of the way station, and the crisis center would be just separate. I can imagine on the 23-hour, the 24/7 clinic could be quite a busy place. Maybe would generate anxiety or tension if you weren't necessarily in crisis that moment, but you're going there for, you know, some type of support, a phone, or, you know, trying to get back on, you know, with food or something like that. I guess that was what I saw going on in the community resource center, which is a place to get all those things that you need to stay healthy, you know, or with food, or, you know, in touch, etc. But a totally separate place if you're actually in crisis where you need to, you know, have help right now.
Okay. Okay. That's interesting. It's interesting to think of how these pieces fit together, for sure. And there's, you know, then we have the behavioral care center, which is coming up in a couple of slides. So, okay, let's keep going here and get through all these, and then we can mix and match on the scenario. So this one is just a slightly renamed title. The items within it are all the same. So switch the title to be work with regional and state partners on systems changes, to try to highlight that there's an advocacy piece, and then there's just also this need to not that we need to work with our regional partners and also advocacy groups in the state, the healthcare authority, etc., to accomplish any of these things: the Medicaid waiver, the inpatient competency restoration services, or secure regional detox, that it's not a go it alone kind of project. Next one is address housing needs. These two items are the same, ensuring that existing supportive housing has what it needs, and then expanding. And what has gone from here is that 90-day rule, which we could bring back. And probably that would go in this advocacy, more systems change part, if somebody was feeling strongly about it. But what I've been hearing is that maybe that's not a 1 to 3 year kind of project. And it's maybe not entirely feasible to take that one on right now to try to make a change at the federal level. Build a new jail and accessory services. Here's that behavioral care center and jail. And then this one stayed the same, the data and the data dashboard. So those are that's the current way these potential projects are laid out.
Could you go back one slide?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any thoughts overall about that? Any of that? Okay, if you do have any, please do share. And I'm wondering, Jill, will these slides be posted, or just the recording is going to be posted? What?
If you want to send me these slides, I can post them.
Okay, if this group would like to have these slides, I would be happy to do that. Let's just talk quickly about these scenarios. So this first scenario is the one that you saw on Wednesday. It has the 23-hour crisis relief out next to the Ann Deacon Center at Iron Gate. So that kind of smooth handoff from one facility to another would be expedited by having them both together, I think was the concept. And then at Slater Road and I-5, which is how we're now going to refer to La Bounty or Ferndale or any other name. Slater Road and I-5 is a new jail, a horizontal jail with a behavioral care center, this large booking area where people can enter and try to get their situation resolved at some level so that they don't enter the jail. That's all would be at Slater Road and I-5. And then at the Civic Center in the courthouse, the juvenile detention holding cells would be repurposed as holding cells for people who are going to go to court that day to come in from the jail. I should also mention this jail idea, that this concept takes the work center people and puts them out at Slater Road as well. And the work center is repurposed to the 23 crisis relief center, 23-hour crisis relief center, 24/7, blah, blah. Okay, so then Civic Center, some holding cells at the courthouse, and the current jail site. One new thing that we threw in here is, oh, well, okay, then the juvenile detention has gone away. If necessary, perhaps the current jail site or the south parking lot could be a site for juvenile detention facility and service center for youth, more located there. Just a new idea. There has not been any discussion of that, and we could keep it or take it out. And then this resource center that we were just talking about with reentry support would be located at the property at 1115 North State, behind that building, behind Walton Place on Champion.
Marty, this is Jack. One clarifying question. In all the scenarios, I think it might be helpful to know where we anticipate the sheriff's office being located, because I'm not clear on that. And I've heard different things at different times. We don't necessarily need that answer today, and I'm sure Sheriff Buffalo can comment on that, or others can. But obviously, if you eliminate, I think the current downtown jail, that's currently where they're housed, and I'm not quite clear where that would be. Maybe
If I could just jump in there for a second, Jack. The facility we're in now is grossly inadequate. We can't add detectives because we have no physical space to place them, and it's been the subject of multiple reports. It should be out more central to the area we primarily serve in the county. And I would hope that I think there's been identified in multiple previous reports the efficiencies that could be gained by co-locating the sheriff's office with the new jail. We could share, we almost operate now like two different agencies, with payroll people out at the work center and payroll people for the law enforcement side here. And I think we could consolidate positions, reception positions, and gain a lot of operational efficiencies by co-locating. So thank you.
Thanks, Sheriff. And as you know, I've kind of we've heard a lot of those conversations, and I just think starting to track that in these scenarios is helpful.
Thank you.
That is, so in this scenario, we then put it at Slater Road, and we can add that in. By the way, I'm showing you these scenarios because on Monday we have our a week from today, we have our first focus group, and all week we'll be doing focus groups, and we wanted to have scenarios to discuss with those folks that we'll be talking to. So the second scenario, based on your poll responses, we wanted to make a scenario that had a vertical jail at Iron Gate. That space is, that would require taking out the work center. We still have the Ann Deacon Center there, and trying to fit a booking area. Probably it would need to be somewhat L-shaped for that property. It's unclear how high yet. We don't have the information yet about how high a vertical facility would need to be on that property to fit the number of cells that would be desired and all of the other services that would be desired. It's not a particularly large plot of land there to work with. So those details I don't have, and they aren't known yet, I don't think. Then at Slater Road and I-5 would a behavioral care center could go there. 23-hour crisis relief center, 24/7, etc. could go in Civic Center at the site of the current jail or south parking lot, and State Street, the resource center. Or perhaps those two are combined which would probably need to be at the Civic Center site. The former jail site or the current jail site, current jail site or the south parking lot to get these two facilities together. I'm just guessing. The piece of land behind the building on State Street is less than 1 acre and it's long and skinny. If you know where we're talking about, it's kind of a strip right behind base camp, basically. So for more flexibility, I would guess that this site of the current jail or the parking lot would be the spot for these buildings. So are there any thoughts about these scenarios or ways you would prefer they be tweaked to present at focus groups? Or perhaps you have a third scenario you think would be better? I think, do we have another like 2 minutes on the agenda? Yeah, thanks, Jack.
We don't really have anything, I would say, is much more important than this, Marty.
Thank you.
Arguably.
Satpal?
I think that these are good points for discussion with the focus groups and everything. But on the scenario 2, civic center, site of current jail, we're gonna get the money now. Therefore, 23-hour facility, the money is coming like now.
Right.
Right?
Point.
And site of current jail is not an option. We can't wait 3 years, 4 years to spend that money, right?
Yeah.
And just doing one facility, 23-hour crisis center on the south parking lot, I don't know how much economic sense does it make, in the sense that it will split the lot, into something, right? And what do we do in future, like 10 years from now, 20 years from now? This is a property county has. County doesn't have very many properties. That's, to me, my dismay. We have very little properties in Bellingham as a county, and out in the county also very few places. So I would invite other suggestions from other people in this meeting, that is it a good proposition to spend time on. The current jail in 4 years can be a good option to have that. They have the kind of beds and things which can be totally remodeled, put more daylight into that, doors and egress, can be all chained, and all this can be modified, right? But that's 5 years away.
So would you prefer on this scenario that we don't touch that current jail or south parking lot spot? We move the 23-hour to the State Street.
Yes.
And put the resource center, like Mike was talking about, the resource center maybe could be at the way station.
Yes, or the resource center can be at the current jail. When we built the jail and everything, it can immediately, we can have plans in the last year of starting the new jail and emptying this jail. We could start working on to create a resource center, because this building can be repurposed if it is not a jail. If it's not a jail, it will take a little bit money, and the smoke problem, coming in and out problem, with the biggest issues were shown about the jail. We can put 3 more set of stairs which are coming directly out, because we won't have locked doors. We won't have these big steel places. This can be we can put a really new color on this jail. Those little slits on the post office side can be made into nice glass windows looking out onto the ocean. Like there is a vision that can be done. But so resource and reentry center is possible in my vision. So
Thank you. What do you think, Arlene?
Well, I just wanted to ask Paul about the dedicated money that you're talking about. Is that for purchasing a property or for building a building?
this will be for building a building. This $9 million we're getting from the state is a capital money to build the building. If we buy the money with the use the money for buying the property, we won't have enough to build it.
Right. Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, thanks. I just want to insert here that I realize we're looking at scenarios. However, I do feel it's really important to have this 23-hour crisis relief center next to the Ann Deacon Center. I mean, within walking distance. For EMS, we're hoping to do some diversion in the field to this facility for offering MAT in the field. And eventually maybe for some mental health that we could divert straight from EMS, bypass the ED to go to this facility. So I do feel it's a little important because if we identify something in the 23-hour and we do need that 3 to 5 to 7 day inpatient to transfer out, it's right there at walking distance. In scenario 2, we can work on the transportation, but I just feel that's a key priority for the relief center.
It makes a lot of sense. It's just, I don't think that it could fit and have a jail there, from what I've heard. That would be the limitation. So, David?
Yeah, and I have to go in just a moment. I got called out to court, but the one thing that I wanted to say was in scenario 1, I don't necessarily have any objection or anything of that nature, but it concerns me just a little bit, the juvenile detention center. I just want to make sure that clearly that can't be an afterthought. The juvenile detention, we have statutory obligations in providing that. And I'm sure Dave Reynolds is on the call, so he can follow up further on this issue. But I just want to make sure that that isn't an afterthought in all this, that it gets converted into, essentially holding cells for people being transported to court, because we do have an obligation with juvenile detention.
Thank you. Hi, Heather.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I also think, Judge Freeman, I wonder about the opportunity we have. I think there has been talk in the past about, can we get juvenile detention down to 0? And I recognize that maybe some kids, that is the appropriate place, but I think there's also an opportunity for that constraints creating innovation with our juvenile detention center. And I understand that there is often a census of 3 or lower, and that's amazing. So I just wanted to add that too.
Thank you. Dave?
Thank you. I share Judge Freeman's concerns and want to make sure juvenile detention's not an afterthought in this as well. We do have obligations, and the facility is designed for both rehabilitation and accountability at the same time. And replicating that may not necessarily be as easy as a task as you may think.
Is it a possibility to divide the space, like remodel the space so that there's a juvenile detention that is smaller than the current and then holding cells?
We have federal sight and sound regulations between juveniles and adults. That makes it difficult.
So you're saying it probably wouldn't work out?
No, the other obligation we have too, we have to separate males and females in detention. So we need different wings for that. Even though we have a few number of females, we do need to keep them separate from the males. And we're dealing with kids who are sometimes 12 and other kids who are 17. That's a big difference in size and maturity and stuff too that we have to be mindful of.
So, okay, thank you. Perry, what do you think?
I wanted to reiterate.
No, I think she said Barry.
Oh, sorry, Barry.
That's okay. They sound alike, right? Perry, Barry. Just wanted to add, as far as the detention space on the 6th floor, we are doing a walkthrough today, later this afternoon, with facilities and the executives and some of the folks from corrections. I think we're going to be looking at that space to see, what it does have to offer. So I just wanted to add that.
Thanks. And Harry?
I wanted to reiterate what Mike Kelly was saying, just relative to the location of the 23-hour crisis relief center. being close in proximity to the Ann Deacon Center for Hope, there's a provider component of transitioning people, many individuals that may be appropriate for entrance into the Crisis Stabilization Center services, as well as law enforcement and EMS being able to drop off at a central location if an individual doesn't meet criteria for one reason or another. At the Crisis Stabilization Center, we have, the option of the 23-hour center. So just wanted to reiterate that for a number of reasons, the services that are being provided, as well as the diversionary component of that. I think it would be simpler to provide transportation in some way, shape, or form for individuals to or from the 23-hour center than it would be to make that referral to additional services within Crisis Stabilization Center from the 23-hour center, if that makes sense. So wanted to reiterate what Mike was saying. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Well, I know you have more meeting to do, and I appreciate all that great input. Thank you so much for having me.
All right, is there anything? It's a pleasure having you, Marty, as always. Is there any other questions for Marty? And Barry, would you like to comment on where we go from here in terms of if members of the Task Force Law and Justice Council have input, or after they've looked at this information, want to communicate that, how to best do that with the planning process?
Absolutely, Jack. Thank you. So as Marty mentioned, we're heading into the focus group phase to look at this work. Another thing that's going on is there's cost estimates being prepared for these scenarios. So we will be able to have that kind of information to talk to the council about. I'm not sure exactly when that's going to be available, but it's a few weeks, right, Tyler? It's close. It's not too far away, but that information will help guide the council when we're starting to look at the various scenarios that are being proposed. So if you do have any ideas, please do send them to Jill, and she'll make sure it gets into the planning group. And as always, we really appreciate all the work that you all have stepped up to do in participating in the workshops and then of course going forward. So I think that's about it, Jack, for the Justice Project this morning.
All right, thank you so much. And thanks again, Marty, for you and Holly and all the work you're doing and helping us facilitate this process.
Thank
All right.
you.
Our next item of business, I think, is, I would hate to say something's fairly straightforward, but we will see. So this is a proposed amendment to the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force Rules of Procedure, primarily relating to a public comment process. That information is contained in the packet on packet pages 1 through 4. So what I would be looking for would be a motion to adopt the rules of procedures presented in the meeting packet, unless somebody is proposing a change, and it would be as amended. And we would also propose that this be effective as of now, so it would take effect for the end of this meeting. So that would be a motion I'm looking for from someone.
So moved.
I think that was that Sheriff Alpo, or was it Chief Tanksley? Okay, I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure which voice I was hearing. Great, thank you, Chief Tanksley. So we have a motion to adopt the rules of procedures presented in the meeting packet, effective immediately.
Second.
Councilman Buchanan seconded it. Are there any questions, discussion? Would anybody like to discuss this? Seeing no hands or anybody unmuting, I'm going to ask everyone in favor to, Jill, we're normally doing unmute and I, is that correct? I believe is the simplest we've determined on Zoom for a formal vote.
Yes, and please also call for no and abstain votes as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So the first call will be for all those in favor, then anyone opposed, and anyone abstaining. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? If so, you can say that or raise a hand. I see none. Is there anyone abstaining? Again, I see no abstentions, so that motion passes unanimously. All right, moving to committee updates. We have two, the steering committee and the Legal and Justice Systems Committee. I guess I got a lot of the agenda today. Barry, as many of you know, has had many demands on his time, and he's our steering committee chair and wasn't able to be at the last meeting and asked that I give a very brief synopsis. Our meeting summary isn't quite prepared. That'll likely be in our next minutes. But the much of the focus of the steering committee was understandably on the Law and Justice Project. I'm going to quickly pull up my agenda to make sure I don't miss anything. Okay, yeah. Oh, and another main area of conversation was on our annual report. As many of you know, we submit actually 2 reports to the county council, the more robust typically being one in June. What we did discuss, though, is in part, this report is intended to communicate to council and the public what is happening with the task force, the Law Justice Council. And there's so much communication and information going on at this time. It seemed rather obvious we're not being lost in terms of getting the attention and awareness of the issues that we are dealing with. So as a result, we are not envisioning an extremely long report. So those of you involved in those reports, certainly communicate with Jill, communicate at steering committee. Jill also has a lot on her plate, and really it was the consensus of the steering committee. Absolutely, we're doing a report, but it doesn't necessarily need to be as long or as broad as it might be in a different climate. So I hope I'm describing that well, and that makes sense. Other than that, at steering committee, we talked a little bit about task force membership, leadership, succession planning. We did, I can't remember if that was a steering committee or one of our planning meetings, we talked about as the process moves forward that we were just hearing about on the Justice Project, how this group, acting both as Law and Justice Council and as the task force, will be involved with making recommendations, providing comment. I appreciated that Barry mentioned we're trying to get some costing information because it seemed, at least to me and I'm sure to others, it's difficult to take a position on what might be the best decision for the county if the issue of what something costs isn't part of that scrutinization or decision-making process. And so we appreciate the efforts being made to get us some sense of what that might be. And other than that, I'm trying to think who else was at Arlene, were you at steering? I think maybe.
Raylene.
Oh, Raylene was, okay. All right, if I'm missing any, oh, Tyler, you were there. Yeah, yeah, I know Tyler was there. Is there anything I'm missing? I'm trying to give kind of a very quick overview, but anything I should be adding that you can think of? Okay, I'm seeing a nodding head, I think. So, all right, I think we're done. Any questions about steering committee? Great. Okay, we will move on then now to our next committee report, which is the Legal and Justice Systems Committee.
Good morning and thank you. We discussed past, future and present. What we want for the annual report on legal and justice, what we've been doing in the past, and things for the future. We did have a little bit of a conversation on future in regards to bail and warrants, who's currently in our jail, and what we would like to see and how we want to educate others on how bail is set. And whether or not that's going to change in the future until we have a new facility, and struggles with continued struggles, I guess, with restoration of competency, which definitely impacts our current jail levels, and then public safety and concerns of those not being able to be incarcerated, whether they should or shouldn't be. And I think we'll be looking that in May. We briefly touched on DV-MRT and DV POTS as something that we would probably want to make sure that was in our legal and justice report for the annual report. And it was a pretty short meeting. So any questions on that? Any other comments, Arlene?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And as a reminder, and this is also for the people in attendance who aren't part of the task force, all of the subcommittees calendars, meetings are open. That information is available on the task force website, and it's a great place to gather more information on what we're doing. All right, our next topic. I'm looking at the steering committee. There we go. All right, our next topic is the update from task force members on new programs or system changes. And I know to start us off, we're fortunate to have Chief Tank and Raylene on the Board for Judicial Administration Alternatives to Incarceration, which is a statewide entity that they're part of. And so I believe they're going to give us an update and some information on that now.
Chief Tank, do you want me to start or you want to proceed? I'm not seeing him yet. Oh, there we go.
If you want to start, that's fine.
All right, Chief Tanksley and I are both members of the BJA Alternatives Task Force, Board of Judicial Administration Strategic Initiative Charter, somewhat similar to this task force, but it's a statewide alternatives to incarceration and task force. It was created by the BJA in June of 2022, co-chaired by San Juan County Judge Katie Loring and Spokane Municipal Court Judge Mary Logan, and is supported by Jeannie Englert with as the BJA manager. She's also a member of the Washington State Administration Office of the Courts. Members of diverse organizations, judicial branches, partners, and courts across the state have met 5 times since September 2022. Our next meeting will be in May. The goal of this strategic initiative is for pretrial and post-conviction incarceration alternatives to be uniformly available to courts throughout the state, regardless of the person's ability to pay or resources of the individual jurisdiction. They're currently working on following activities: assess different incarceration alternatives practices across the state, assess the ability of those accused of crimes to access those services equitably across the state, and identify barriers to achieving broad access to alternatives statewide. Our next meeting isn't until the end of May. You will see in the packet that was distributed today was the last meeting. Unfortunately, Tank and I were both in other locations at the time that the last meeting was there, but all of the meetings are available. If requested, we can get a copy of the live Zoom meetings that are available to anybody that would be interested in it. Something that came out of the last meeting that I noticed is an overwhelming barrier throughout is navigation and reentry. So as we look forward on changes, reentry is definitely something we want to continue to work on. And I believe we're going to have a presentation later on, not in today's meeting, but in future meetings with Eric Ritchie and a member of the reentry team that might give us some more insight. Tank, is there other areas that you want to add to that?
No, not really. And I think you did a great job, but I will just say one thing, that the legal authority from that group is really, they're focused on analyzing the legal and judicial authority for the alternative options throughout the whole state. So it's really interesting to hear what other counties and other agencies are doing. And the goal is for Raylene and I to bring that information back to Whatcom County.
Any questions about this? Tyler?
Yeah, Chief Kingsley, Raylene, I had a question about whether or not there's discussion about the bail reform or the committees from a statewide level, or is this more focused on the alternatives than actual kind of the judicial decision of how and when to utilize bail?
It is focused on the alternatives. I'm sure that might come up at some point, because as we all know, that bail reform is a potential alternative for some people. So once that information comes forward, if and when it does, we'll certainly pass it on. Good question.
It seems like it would be a good piece of information for the Incarceration Prevention and Reduction Task Force to focus on. And I was thinking about it when Raylene gave her update from the Legal and Justice Subcommittee, because I know we're having those conversations locally as well. So trying to inform the system and inform the public how we utilize bail, how it could maybe be reformed, and what those conversations are on a statewide level would be a really good piece of information to continue to focus on.
Noted, and I'll certainly ask that at our next meeting.
Thank you. Paul?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, we need to bring clarity. This is a very cumbersome issue of jail reform and cash bail, not jail reform, bail reforms, I'm sorry, and cash bail, because sometimes we confuse the state and federal issues with local issues. I would request that, I wish that Mr. Ritchie was here today. We need to see what is in our hands, like as a Whatcom County, because our discussion is local discussion right now, which we are embroiled in. What are the things we as a local reforms we can do? Has those been done or not? And those are mostly is not in the power of council. They are not in the power of county executive. They are in the power of two people, the prosecutor and the judges, right? Because they are the ones who deal with that. I would say that we collectively should really explore and invite Mr. Ritchie, if you can shed some more light that, okay, these are the things we can do locally. And that's what we should concern ourselves with, because the state, changing the state system cannot be done in 2 months, 3 months, or even in a year. That is a statewide issue. Many different people can weigh on it, and they're not going to look at Whatcom County. The king counties of the world are going to suck up all the air on those issues, right? My aim is we should look locally and exhaust everything we can do, which is in power, even if it takes a year. Now that's in our hands. Let's do that right now, so that we can say to our public that whatever is in our hands, we have done it or we are doing it. I think that clarity is very important, because it gets mushy. Jail reform, let's do cash bail, let's do jail reform, bail reform. And then we don't get anywhere because it's so nebulous. The word is so nebulous. Sorry, just wanted to share that.
I appreciate that, Paul, and we will be discussing that again at the next Legal and Justice Subcommittee in reference to bail and how it is currently being addressed in Whatcom County. But I see Sheriff Elko has his hand up, so I'll let him add to that.
Well, I'm glad somebody else is getting blamed for the bail, because I keep getting emails that I'm setting the bail too high. So I need a pay raise if I'm doing that. I just wanted to point out that the Washington Rules of Criminal Procedure 3.2 finds that everybody shall be released without condition, including bail, unless one of the explicit exceptions exist that are in those rules. So that's something to remember. And Paul is right; it's beyond the county's ability to control that. So there's a committee, obviously, from the statewide perspective looking at it, but I don't think there's much that can be done locally with respect to that.
Yes, and I think, Paul, you're right. It does have to do with the prosecutor and the judges, but it also has to do with the defense counsel as well. Defense counsel can argue against a high bail and explain why. Prosecution can say it's a community safety issue and this is why we're asking for bail. Ultimately, it's up to the judge to determine what's adequate or if bail is even needed on a case-by-case basis, which is set out by the the rules and the laws. So we will have a more in-depth conversation about that at our next May Legal and Justice meeting. And I encourage anybody interested or wanting to add that conversation to join in at the next Legal and Justice Subcommittee. Any other comments or questions on legal and justice or the Board of Judicial Administration strategic alternatives to incarceration? I think it's back to you.
All right, thank you, Raylene, and thanks, everyone. We appreciate thank you, Raylene, doing that and kind of being this liaison and helping bring information from, from the state to Whatcom County, but also sharing what we're learning here. All right, the next item, well, the next thing I believe that we have on our update, we were going to ask Eric Ritchie about, we discussed this at steering committee, some regular reports from the statewide reentry council, so we'll reach out about that, because I don't see anyone here from the prosecutors. Am I missing someone from the prosecutor's office? I don't believe I am. All right. Beyond that, we have a couple of, I don't want to put anyone on the spot because everyone is busy. We had reached out to a few people that might have some information on these things if they want to share it, but I don't know if they're prepared to, and if they're not, that's perfectly fine. But I guess first I wondered if the executive or deputy executive Tyler Satpal would like to talk at all about the proposal for a new behavioral health care center, just to share some basic information. If you're able to do that, great. If you're not prepared to, that's fine.
Tyler, maybe you want to go that? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I can speak to that. And so, Jack, just to clarify, your in regards to the sobering center, the 23-hour behavioral.
I believe that's exactly the one it's the one that I think we've referenced maybe in a report, because we'd had some questions about what would this new behavioral health care center be, and I believe it is that one.
Okay, yeah, great. So through conversations, and I get the different groups somewhat confused, as we probably all do, whether it was the stakeholder advisory committee or whether it was the Incarceration Prevention Reduction Task Force, or whether it was the Law and Justice Council, in these last couple of months in consideration of looking into a new jail project, also became the question about where we as a community want to intervene into individuals. That led to looking at other communities, other jurisdictions, and identifying that the state as well, Representative Rural and others in Olympia, are looking into these crisis relief centers. So crisis relief center, as we have come to know them, is a location where it will be able to have law enforcement and emergency EMS drop off for individuals that are in crisis. We've also termed them in some consideration kind of a sobering center, up to 23-hour location for people to get medical assisted treatment and be able to have a drop-off location instead of the jail. And so back to the question about where do we want to intervene as a community. There was a lot of topic, a lot of consideration to it. The executive has submitted a capital ask to the legislature. It is in both the House and the Senate capital budget. We are waiting on pins and needles for that for the capital budget to come out. And we are very hopeful that they will see the vision of the House budget, which included $9 million for this crisis relief center associated with it. So that's the background, that's the update, the status. I'm sure Perry Mowry can answer some technical questions better than I, but I think, Jack, that was the level of detail you're looking for, correct?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you.
Great.
Okay, are there any questions? Perry, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to add that in regard to the legislation work that's going on, if folks are interested, they can look at Senate Bill 5120. That will give the specifics in regards to the recommendations. I was paying pretty close attention to the interest of the legislature in these facilities being Medicaid reimbursable. We always have challenges relative to operational costs. And so that's a very important consideration. As well as the fact that they are a no refusal unless it is a capacity issue, which will certainly help the community greatly. I suspect, as I had mentioned earlier, that probably the limitation of 16 beds is likely, given the legislators' work towards it being Medicaid eligible. I've got to do a little bit more research on this too. I had put the question out there of why is it 23 hours? It's actually 23 hours and 59 minutes in the legislation. And so if I understand correctly, this is orienting towards outpatient capacity of services because inpatient is 24 hours and beyond. But I'll continue to do some research on that. I just wanted to share that information.
Thank you, Perry. Perry, I think I'm going to put you back on the spot. I tried to text you, I think I had the wrong number. I was wondering, I hate catching you off guard. And so if you're not prepared for this today, it's fine. But I was wondering if you could give us any update on the health department's plans to provide some transportation to and from services. So if you just have a little information on that, that was a request we'd had.
Oh, sure. I would be happy to do that. There's a couple of things that are happening. I happen to work within the Health and Community Services, the division of the Response Systems Division under Melora Christensen. And there is a position that is going through the county council process for a driver for transportation services. The individual will do other things as well, but to be included within the Response Systems Division staffing. And also, and Mike might be able to give us just a little more information about this. I know initially we have been gifted with an EMS van that was used historically just up until recently to support individuals in transportation relative to, I know it was relative to COVID, not necessarily specifically, but in any number kinds of transportation needs for individuals that vulnerable individuals within our community, and it's been extraordinary. I can give an example of that, one of the things that can happen at the Ann Deacon Center for Hope Crisis Stabilization Center is an individual is at the facility but actually needs, for example, primary health care that can't be provided at the Crisis Stabilization Center. The challenge is that there's no sustained transportation for that individual relative to our two providers, Compass Health that does mental health stabilization and Pioneer Human Services that does the detox work, so that they would literally take it out of their budget to maybe transport an individual in a cab or something of that nature. And so EMS supported us in making themselves available if they got a call from one of the providers in need of help of transportation of an individual to any number of settings. I just use the hospital as an example, and it was a real significant component. So now that transportation becomes more consistent and available with our new staff that is coming into the Response Systems Division. And at a minimum, although we are purchasing some additional vehicles at this point, the van that EMS provided to us. If I missed something, Mike, please.
Yeah, no, great overview, Perry. Thanks so much. And those are all the gaps we were trying to cover, not only through COVID, but just post-COVID stuff too. So, and I'll just say the group, this is the van that keeps on giving. We got it from a WTA on a grant program, got past the reporting on it, and it's just been a great vehicle. So we just transferred the vehicle over to the RSD Vision last week, got it cleaned up for them, got brand new tires, etc. And actually it's a 13-passenger van. However, we pulled 3 of the bench seats out for 2 big bench seats. So it's got plenty of room to haul people's stuff around, etc. So I think more should have a person hired up once they get that through council, but it's just been a great relief. And I will say over the last 2.5 years, we transported about 1,250 people with that van. And I think that's just a good indicator of the gap that we covered in all these stresses we had in the community the last 3 years. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Perry. All right. Sorry about all my kids are, I have it on do not disturb anyway. They're texting me a lot. I apologize. I think we're at the point of the meeting where I wanted, before we go to public comment, to ask if there were any task force members that were prepared to either give us some updates or if there was any other business before we move to public comment. Going once, twice. Mr. Weebush, good to see you.
You too. Thank you. I get Bruce and I met quickly this morning and kind of had a few things we wanted to throw in there. We have continued to be offering our groups here that we work on criminal thinking and as well as domestic violence and anger management. We have seen a lot of growth recently in the mental health court, both with Whatcom County and over at the city of Bellingham. So it's been encouraging to see, and some significant efforts there going to increasing the enrollment there. We've also seen with the Family Justice Court that Judge Anderson started exactly a year ago, seen some numbers there. And again, that's to work with high-risk domestic violence offenders and increasing that accountability by not only having them through the programs that we offer, but to have that ongoing, consistent vision in front of a judge and having to check in there. We've seen that can make a difference and an impact on their compliance. As we look forward, we're also kind of we are very excited. District Court as well, Judge Rands and Anderson kind of in the beginning phases working alongside the city of Bellingham and Judge Lev for the community court and what that might look like for our community. Again, we're on the early phases there, just getting some appointments and meetings set up there, but we're excited to be a part of that. District Court's also real close to implementing a pre-trial 24/7 sobriety program, which is monitoring alcohol use, hopefully sobriety that is, while folks are out on release with a pending DUI charge. And if they do meet the criteria, which is established by Washington state guidelines, as well as maintain sobriety through that time, they could potentially be earning credit for jail time when their case does resolve. So we're working alongside Jail Alternatives as well as WASPIC on that project. But there's some things we're excited to be a part of and things coming for our community involved in District Court. I don't know, Bruce, if you wanted to jump in there and add anything else.
Nope, I think you had it covered. Thanks.
Thank you.
Jake, I actually have a question because I'm intrigued.
Sure.
You know some of my background and circumstances. So, so if you got somebody on that program and if they comply with the sobriety and maybe they have a 5-day set, they get kind of, it's like credit sort of, so they don't have to do jail time and it's some formula?
Exactly. It's a formula I don't have all the details on, but potentially, yes, exactly. You know, if they follow the criteria while their charge is pending and meet all the guidelines that the state has, they could petition the court to get credit for that jail time.
No, that's great. That was my son texting me, you know, he had scram bracelets and this and that. And when you can keep people out of jail and keep them sober, that's awesome. So
yeah, it would involve a scram bracelet or a handheld portable breath test device. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Anything else for, I guess this is for District Court probation. Okay. Raylene, was your hand, were you going to report? I know Heather's hand is up. I think it's to report on something. Was your question, Raylene, related to District Court or a different topic?
It's actually related to what Jake was just reporting on the 24/7 monitoring program. There's actually a statutory mandate for individuals that have been arrested and convicted of a DUI prior, and then they have a new DUI charge. That there either has to be ignition interlock or 24/7 monitoring. District Court appears to be working on implementing that requirement. I know Judge Rance and I talked about this before, that the statutory mandate, if it's in place properly, that there would be credit for time served for individuals that are on that 24/7 pretrial mandate, that they would be credited if there's a conviction for time served. And I think that's where that's going, but there is statutory language involving that for pretrial monitoring for prior convictions.
Right, and really, maybe when you guys do your report, it'd be cool to just keep minutes, because these are so representative of the efforts to try to divert where appropriate, where public safety can be met. So I think we have a few sentences about these programs. It's great, the report. Thank you. Heather.
Thank you, Jack. I heard my sound cut out a little bit when I was sharing about juvenile detention. What I understand is that at times our average daily census has been 3 youth or less in that juvenile detention center. And I would love to have a deep dive understanding at the task force of what are the opportunities around decreasing juvenile detention even further, and along with thinking about this comprehensive justice system, is there an opportunity to build a trauma-informed space since many of those youth have been victimized themselves and their crimes are coming out of childhood trauma. And I also want to point to King County. King County has a goal of getting to 0 youth in detention. They have not achieved that yet, but there could be some learnings there. So I just want to ask for a presentation at some point at the task force or at one of the committees around juvenile detention, if that's appropriate.
Thank you. And I think Dave Reynolds maybe have a comment on that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'd be happy to present what's going on. We're actually seeing our numbers start to go back up in detention. They're still far from what they were in the past. I think one thing we need to be mindful of is if we do not have detention, where are we going to house kids who have to be housed? We've had this last year several kids on attempted murder, and they're now in the institution at age 21. If we can't house them in detention, they're going to be housed in the jail or somewhere else. So I'm going to be very mindful of that. We also house kids for being tried as adults. If we don't have juvenile detention, they're going to be housed in the jail and just add to that problem as well. So I think it's a great goal to have 0 detention, but we have to be realistic in the fact that there's some kids who need to be detained for public safety issues.
Thank you, Dave. Anything else? All right. Does anyone have any reason we wouldn't move now to public comment? Okay, seeing no objections, Jill, I'm going to ask you if you would please facilitate the public comment for us.
Yes, thank you. We have a number of attendees at our meeting today. If any of you would like to speak to the task force, please virtually raise your hand now by selecting the raise hand icon, or if you're dialing in on phone by pressing *9. Would anyone like to speak to the task force? And I don't see any hands raised from our attendee list, and it looks like our conference room is empty as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jill. We appreciate all you do. Well, with that, thank you everyone for being here. We appreciate it, and the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.